All right, so welcome everyone to today's Tales from the Deep program. And thank you so much to Emily for joining us for today's presentation on Scientists on the Shoreline, all about the great community and citizen science work through shoreline cleanup. And so we're looking forward to all of you joining us today. And I would like to start today's program by saying how grateful I am to be able to learn and teach and live on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people here in what we often refer to as Vancouver, British Columbia. And since time immemorial, it has been a tradition and a practice to incorporate observation and storytelling in everything that they do. And both ocean-wise research and education are so grateful for the opportunity to incorporate those practices into the programs and initiatives that we lead. So we're very excited for a great program here with you today, and I will hand the floor over to Emily.
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Emily and I'm the Assistant Manager for the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. I'm located in Toronto, Ontario, and so just before I get started, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the land that I live on, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And a huge thank you to the Oceanwise Education team for having me here for a second time this month. We're really grateful to be a part of this series. And today I'll be chatting about what it means to be a community or a citizen scientist and how you can become one as well. So just before we begin, I'm going to do a little bit of a background on the shoreline cleanup for those of you who might not already be familiar. So our program, the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, is a conservation partnership by WWF Canada and Oceanwise Conservation Association. And through our program, Canadians are able to participate in and lead cleanups across the country. A shoreline cleanup is considered a group of any size, anywhere across Canada, people who want to just get out onto their local shoreline and steward their environment by removing litter and marine debris. And then when they're out on the shoreline, they record the different types and the amount of litter that they're collecting. And over time, this provides us with a big picture, so long-term data, essentially. But why do we want to clean up litter in the first place? Well, one of the biggest reasons is because we're a significant part of the problem. 80% of litter that ends up in our oceans is derived from land-based sources. And this is entirely caused by humans. In fact, all major ocean basins are contaminated with plastic debris, unfortunately. And these items don't biodegrade in the environment. Instead, they photodegrade, meaning the sun breaks them down into smaller pieces, and they can eventually become microplastics, which are really small and really hard for our volunteers to see, let alone pick up and remove from the environment. And litter in the environment can have really negative impacts on wildlife and ecosystems, including the ingestion of microplastics or becoming entangled by a large net. And there's also the issue of environmental toxicity due to the harmful chemicals that can be released from these plastics. But the good news is that you can help. With our program, with the Shoreline Cleanup, absolutely anyone can get involved and make a difference. Basically, as I said, our volunteers can host cleanups any time of year, cleanups of any size, anywhere across the entire country. And with that being said, we do like to acknowledge that you don't need to be a citizen to do science. Anyone within the community is welcome to contribute and to participate in our program. We really do welcome anyone from across the country. We also like to stress to our volunteers that data collected by you, by our volunteers, is just as valuable and it contributes just as much to science as data that might have been collected by a larger institution like a university or a government group, for example. If you can imagine, often these groups within universities or within government, they're smaller groups. They can even be just 1 or 2 people who are working on a science project, and they are trying to get all of this data, but it's just not possible to be in all of these different places across the country. And so that's when you come in and you're able to get out there and collect that data so that they can then use that to make change and pursue different projects throughout the years. And there's 2 different ways that you can get involved in doing this. So you can either join a group of existing community scientists and head out to your local shoreline with them. This is the join a cleanup option, or you can choose to lead a group of community scientists yourself. And this is where you can choose your own location. You can make it private or public so more people can join you. It's completely up to you. But no matter which option you choose, you compile data using our data card that was created by senior scientists at OceanWise, WWF Canada, and is constantly being reviewed by shoreline litter experts around the country. So every group type uses this card, and it's really, really important that we are using this when we get out onto our shorelines because we collect so much information that is incredibly useful for creating change throughout the country. This includes information like the location of your cleanup, the kilometers of the shoreline that's being cleaned, how many people are actually participating, and then how many bags of trash are recycling. And then you can even note down the unusual items that you're finding. And all of this helps to tell us where cleanups are happening, where we might need to actually start doing more cleanups, what items are being found, things like that. And then our volunteers will also actually tally each individual item that they're finding on the second part of the card. And then at the end, they total it all up and then go onto our website, log in, and put all of their information there, which can then be shared as more open source data for those scientists or researchers or whoever wants to get their hands on the data to make change. And we have tons of different types of groups who are doing this. So the most common one I would say is community groups. So these are people like myself who might gather some people within my own neighborhood to get out there and make a difference on our shoreline. We also have workplace. So potentially a business or organization wants to make a difference in the place that they work. So on their lunch hour or after work, they'll go out as a team and clean up. We also have schools, and this ranges from, preschool, maybe even all the way up to university college. There's no age limit on who can make a difference and who can help clean up. And then finally, we have our youth groups. So some example of these include Girl Guides and Scouts, Boys and Girls Club participants. This is another one of our larger groups. And this group is especially important because of how many youth are actually involved in our program. So it's really important that we give a shout out to this group especially. And I think it also goes to show that absolutely anyone can get involved. For example, if you are a 10-year-old who is really keen on making a difference in your community, you can reach out to us and we can help you get involved with something like this. And then with all of this data, all of these group types are actually able to make a difference. And since 1994, our volunteers have cleaned over 44,000 kilometers of shoreline, and this has been done over 27,000 separate cleanup events. And the biggest part is that we've collected over 2 million kilograms of litter, which is incredibly impressive, I think. And then with all of this data, our volunteers that have submitted on our website, we put together what we call our Dirty Dozen list. So this is the 12 most commonly found items on our shorelines. And unsurprisingly, we see that most of these items do fall within the category of single-use plastics, many of which are not considered to be recyclable in most municipal recycling streams, and unfortunately end up in landfill or in the environment. And this includes items such as cigarette butts, which have been number one on our list for many years running, followed by tiny plastic or foam, which could have been a variety of different items that have then broken down over time, followed by food wrappers and bottle caps. And then other single-use plastic items on the list include plastic bags, plastic bottles, straws, and some of the other packaging, foam and coffee cups. We also put together a Dirty Dozen list for different provinces and territories, but we do find that the majority of the items do remain the same, with maybe the exception of the Atlantic provinces, where we do see a little bit more fishing gear, things like that. So with all of this data and all of these findings that we get from all of the submissions online, we're actually able to make a real change within the country. The litter data is first collected on our website and then sent to a group called the Ocean Conservancy in Washington, D.C. And they compile data from cleanup programs around the world to create this global network of litter information. And then secondly, our community science data is used by Canadian governments, more on a federal level, as well as provincial. And then thirdly, we have municipalities, NGOs, universities, etc. All of them use our data to investigate different pollution trends in different regions in Canada. And lastly, and something that I think is really important, is that we also have an impact on the individual level. So people who are getting out there and cleaning up kind of notice things that they might be using in their own lives, and then are able to kind of make that connection and form some sort of behavioral change within their own lives, which I think is really important for long-term sustainable action on this. So just to give a few examples, on a national scale, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued an announcement in June 2019 stating that Canada's commitment to eliminate single-use plastics would progress, and they cited Shoreline cleanups data as a reliable source of information on the topic, which was a really big thing for us. And then more on a regional level, the Surrey Naturalists, who are a small conservation nonprofit in Surrey, BC, petitioned the city of White Rock and the city of Surrey to restrict the use of expanded polystyrene foam all across the Nikamekel River. And they used the data from our cleanups to support their argument, and luckily they ended up being successful. But going forward, we really want to take the Shoreline Cleanup Program to the next level. So firstly, our community scientists will be able to track their plastic use and plastic waste at the source and in their homes with a at-home plastic waste audit that we're working on with the plastics program at Oceanwise, to hopefully again help with those behavioral changes that I think we can all make in our own lives. And then secondly, we're really hoping that Canadian cities and towns will be able to help progress their efforts for cleaner communities and make them more tangible by using our Clean Shoreline Communities program. And then finally, we hope to reach our 1 millionth community scientist very soon. And who knows, that could be you, because now our cleanups are open. We are accepting individual, small group cleanups and household cleanups as of July 14th. So I definitely encourage you to now get back out on those shorelines if you can, but make sure that you do check out our checklist so that you're doing it in the safest way possible. And if you do have any questions about that or any other ways that you might want to get involved or just to chat about litter, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is there on the slide, or you can also visit our website and just contact our team overall. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Emily. Those were some great images. It brings me back to all those wonderful opportunities to get out on the shoreline. And it's so nice to hear that there's, some steps and guidelines to continuing with cleanups even during this time and how to do it safely. So are there any kind of tips or items from the checklist that you could share with the audience to keep in mind when doing a shoreline cleanup in these small group settings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first I should just say that do what you're comfortable with. If you're not yet comfortable to get outside, we do still have online activities on our website. But if you are getting out there, number one rule is to follow provincial and local public health information. So I know most, at least where I am, the cities are all doing different things. And so it's always best to check in with them first to make sure that the size of your group is appropriate, your location is appropriate, things like that. And try and stay local if you can, so you're not traveling too far to get to a cleanup location. Check out your neighborhood park, for example, and try and do so on off-peak time. So don't go when it's really busy, just because it might make it harder to socially distance from everyone. And of course, wear gloves, masks, the proper equipment.
Wonderful. Those are great things to keep in mind. And so if you're looking for somewhere to go kind of close to home, but you don't live near a shoreline, you mentioned parks. Are there some other areas that people could consider doing a cleanup that would still be considered a shoreline cleanup?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we really like to stress is that you don't need to live on water or near water for it to be considered a shoreline cleanup. I know it's a little deceiving in our name, but anywhere that leads to water is considered a shoreline. So a storm drain, for example, along your street or in a park. Remember that litter travels, and so eventually it could get in the water even if it didn't start very close by. So absolutely anywhere where there's garbage, you can do a cleanup, as long as it's safe and you're allowed within that location, of course.
Excellent. Well, it's so nice to see that our audience today has done some cleanups, done some shoreline
Awesome.
cleanups.
Good.
And even done some small groups. So one of our audience members was commenting that they just got out and did a cleanup with their parents very recently.
Oh, that's so nice. I'm really glad to hear that people are getting out there now.
Excellent. Yeah, it's really nice to hear, and we love for you to share those experiences with us. What are some other ways that the audience could connect with Shoreline Cleanup, either on social media or share some of their experiences with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are always looking to hear different stories from our volunteers. There's, so many across Canada that it's, nearly impossible for us to connect with everybody, but you can always reach out on social media on any of our platforms, or you can email us directly. If you want to get involved with our program in other ways, like I said, we still have online activities on our website. We also have webinars. We've slowed down a little bit now that we're able to get back outside, but it is still available online, and we do update it regularly. And you can also check out different data maps, our annual reports as well, just to get a feel for kind of what people have been finding over the years and kind of see how it might have changed or stayed the same. So that's always fun for me, but I like really digging into the data.
Nice. And this one's one of my favorite questions. What is some of the most bizarre things that people have found when they've done a shoreline cleanup?
I feel like there's pretty much anything you can think of, people have found. I was talking to someone before COVID, I think, and they found like a series of doll heads, like kind of creepy looking doll heads. It was just really weird. I did a cleanup up north, and we actually found polar bear skin, which was kind of weird. And then there's, typical things like fishing line. I've seen a lot of ropes kind of get tangled around this, like sticks and rocks and whatnot near us. Barbecues, bikes, like anything you can imagine, we've found, or our volunteers have found.
There you go. It's kind of like a bizarre treasure hunt along with a cleanup.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually also found like money in this. It was like a pirate cup looking thing, and there was some coins in there. So lots of weird things.
Yeah, lots of things to explore, and it's always a great way to kind of get to know your neighborhood and your community a little bit better as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I definitely encourage our audience to keep sending in any other questions that you have for Emily today. And one of my questions that I'm curious about is, so you mentioned where you're connecting in from today in Canada, and I know that in Vancouver, we have some members of the Shoreline cleanup team working here, but kind of where in Canada can you find the Shoreline cleanup team? Kind of how far and wide does it go?
Yeah, so we are a small but mighty team. We have two, sometimes three members in Vancouver in the Oceanwise headquarters, I guess, at the Vancouver Aquarium. Myself, I'm located in Toronto in the WWF office, as we are a partnership, and then we also have one other team member in Montreal in the WWF office there. But because we are a conservation partnership between the two organizations, we do have kind of access to different people within those organizations across the country. And we do work with municipalities as well, on each side of the country. So it kind of helps our reach a little bit.
Excellent. That's so great to hear about these ocean-wise and collaborative efforts that can be kind of anywhere near
Definitely.
you. And it's so important that you have such a network of volunteers as well to help this program going forward.
We definitely, nothing could get done if we didn't have our volunteers out there doing all of the hard work.
Wonderful. So we're, I think, getting close to the end of today's program, but I was wondering, is there anything else that you can tell us about what's coming up next for Shoreline Cleanup, or things that our audience can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming up, we do have our at-home waste audit, which we're really excited about. So this will be a way for you to take a look in your own bins and figure out kind of what you're contributing to landfill, and maybe different ways that you can reduce your footprint or find alternatives to those single-use items that you're using in your life. So stay tuned for that. Again, everything will be updated on our website, or you can sign up for our newsletter, and we'll be putting out reminders or announcements there.
Excellent. There's so many great ways to stay in touch, even at this time where we might be a bit more physically distant from one another.
Yeah, definitely. Makes it easier.
Yeah, definitely. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and a big thank you to our audience that joined us on a perhaps sunny Thursday afternoon. And we are going to be continuing to host guests from Oceanwise Conservation and Research throughout the next few weeks, so that we hope you come back time and time again to connect with us. And coming up next week, we are so excited to talk about our sustainable seafood program. We're going to be hosting a Tales from the Deep called Seafood and Sustainability from Ocean to Plate with some of our team. So we hope to see you next Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific time for that program. So in addition to next week's Tales from the Deep seafood program that we're always excited to share. You can keep track of what's coming up next program-wise by following our Facebook group. So Tales from the Deep. Now, if you go to OceanWise Facebook group, you can see that under the online events listing, and the header looks like this. So you'll get reminders, which are always super happy if you follow that and kind of keep track of that. So that will give you all the latest updates on what's going on. If you know anyone that is 11 to 15 years old, Education is also hosting an entirely virtual summer camp this August. So August 17th to 21st, we're collaborating with Stanley Park Ecology Society here in Vancouver to deliver a very place-based program, and we're going to be connecting to all sorts of ways that youth can get involved with community science. So if you know anyone that might be interested, you can always follow us on Twitter and check that out. We'd love to see you there or see some of your friends and family in that program. And of course, we want to stay connected with you as well. And so you can find out more programs to tune into by visiting ocean.org/learnonline or following us on Twitter at OceanWiseEDU, as well as our online classrooms and resources at education.ocean.org. And of course, while we're so thrilled that the Vancouver Aquarium has been open for the past few weeks, we still have lots of great initiatives that we'd love to see your support, whether it's sharing these with people that you know or contributing, maybe making a donation. And so you can check out all of those great opportunities at vanaqua.org/saveva/community. So once again, a really big thank you to Emily for telling us all about these great ways to get outside and really contribute to your community through the Shoreline Cleanup Program and all the wonderful places that your data is going and going to work for you when you do that. So thank you so much, and we'll sign off until next week.
Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.